blank, okay? The sample is just a made-up case that I just made up, okay? To just sort of give an example of what I would be doing if I'm trying to develop data to do my tax return or hand to a preparer that does your tax return, wherever they may be. You're going to find out there's an awful lot of judgment in this process. I don't know how good record keepers y'all are, but if I've owned my house for a while, I probably do not have the receipt where I bought my dishwasher back in 2001. I probably do not have that. So you're going to find there's a lot of judgment in this. Also, there's no requirement. As a matter of fact, I would even dare say the IRS does not want you to attach whatever you come up with to your return to send in. You keep this in your records, and it supports what you're going to put on your tax return. My experience with the IRS, you attach something like that, they're going to throw it away and just go forward with what your forms are. And if you get chosen to be looked at, then they're going to make you pull back out and show the support at that time. So just stuff like that. But that's what you've got in front of you. And the blank one is one that you can use to calculate this by hand, but it's also exactly what we would send you if you asked us to email the Excel spreadsheet. And it's already set up so when you when you do the calculations, you'll see it's done by room in your house. It'll automatically carry those losses to the summary page for you. But be careful if you start hitting here and there and you think you mess up formulas. You might want to get your adding sheet out and make sure that it's adding correctly if you're worried about doing that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to ask you to have your information sheet out, and we'll be referring from it back and forth to the other worksheets. Okay? And anytime, by the way, any questions, raise your hand. I might ask you to come forward, or I might go to you, let you talk in the mic, or I might hear your question restated. I understand that was the problem they had this morning. And at the end, I'll stay here. I have nothing else to do this afternoon. Well, that's probably not true, but I'll stay here and answer any questions that I possibly could. Okay? I will start out by saying this also. This is very judgmental. There's been a lot of information out there. I was very interested. I had somebody text me, and they'd already been to the first meeting. And they said, I asked, what did the county person say? Well, I'm going to speculate y'all didn't like that answer. A lot of y'all did not like the answer they gave you. I'm going to speculate on that. Because that really goes into the crux of a lot of what we're dealing with today. Not all of it, but some. Oh, by the way, too, I'm not here by myself. Other CPO, I had two of them. One of them showed up late. Devin Riley is over here, the younger guy, better looking than me. And Kim Salmon came up. If you have trouble finding something or just having trouble locating it, they'll come over there and say, it's this page or something like that. So feel free to call them over to help you if you would like. But you know, I was just very curious what they're going to do. The conversations I've had, and we'll get started after this moment, is with appraisers. I know the folks in River Landing on Candlewood had contacted the local appraiser about doing some sort of blanket appraiser for all those homes that were flooded. And that appraiser came to my office and we talked about it. And she said she had consulted with her licensing board in Raleigh and with a local bank's appraisal reviewer. And what they told her to do was essentially do an appraisal of what the property was worth before Hurricane Florence, and then just have the taxpayer accumulate the cost it would take to get it back to where it was, and just subtract the cost from your beginning for market value, and that's your drop in bank. And I told her, I said, I don't think they need you if that's all they're going to do. They can just take tax value and they can do math. I said, you know, anybody can do that. I said, but I don't think that smells right when you look at the rules, because, and you know, and I'll share with you some other conversations I had with other CPAs on the topic as well. So let's jump off here, and I'm, you know, you can read that first part, and I'll just let you read that. Then we're talking about overall tax filing considerations, middle of the page. I think most people know this, but I'm going to state them out loud. You do have your choice of claiming your personal casualty loss resulting from Hurricane Florence on your 2018 return that you file in 2019, or amending your 2017 tax return if it's already filed. Some people may not have filed because they've got through January 31st to file your 17 if you had an extension. And so some people have not filed that return. I know at least one of my clients that's here has not filed. And so we might as well wait and get the loss developed before we can file initially. But there's probably not many of those. If you choose to elect a claim against 2017 income, you can go ahead and prepare that now and mail it in. Refunds probably will not come back super fast, but they will come back quicker than probably waiting to file your 2018 return in 19. Because the tax law changes lowered most people's rates, it is likely that many people will get more money back if they do what I just said. On the very back page of this, you'll see the 2018 tax rates compared to 2017 tax rates. And most everybody in between, you know, 0 and, well, not 0, the lowest bracket is 10%, it stayed 10%, but most everybody else is getting a 3% break this year. So right off the bat, if your income is staying about the same and you've got about 100,000 or so of total income, and it's a matter of whether you put it on this year's or last year's, just with the rate differential, there's 3% different right there. Now, that's not going to always be the case as far as if you have super high income in 2018 for whatever reason, and it shoots you up in the 24% bracket, and last year it was down in the 15% bracket, you may find it better off to claim 18. But if your income has stayed close to the same, I think a lot of people will come some better off by filing an amended return in 2017. Maybe a little more difficult, but amended returns, I thought one gentleman, amended returns are not that difficult. You can't electronically file them. But basically you're just going back and making this change, and there's a couple of extra forms for the return. Yes, sir.
It's my understanding in 2017, you were allowed to take your casualty loss, even though you took a standard deduction and add it to the casualty loss to the standard deduction.
I do not know that to be the case.
Yes.
I do not know that to be the case.
It is in the regs for 2017.
I'll
Now,
have
what
to
they're
check.
going to do for 2018 is a question that I'm not aware of. But my understanding that you could take the casualty loss, add it to the standard deduction in 2017, you didn't have to go back and itemize.
I do not know that to be the case.
Okay.
It had to do with family declared disaster area.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
It had to be a federally declared disaster.
Yeah.
Correct.
My gut feeling is, if it is the law, and by the way, publication 547 at www.irs.gov, okay? Publication 547. And that is a big item. Let me restate the question. Question is, if in prior years you were not itemizing your deductions, which a lot of people do not, and in 2018, more and more people, because the standard deduction is about almost double. So if you didn't have to itemize your deductions last year, and for $12,700, I believe, for a couple under age 65 and above, it's like 15.3. I think it's 15.3. So the question is there a rule that says I can just go back to 2017, take my total casualty loss and add it to the 15.3 standard, and then do it? I'll have to check on that. I have not had one like that. But has anybody read that specifically?
That's a good point. 2018, I know you can file a short form and take the casualty loss on top of your standard deduction for 18.
Yeah.
I don't know about 17.
No, it was in 17.
I think they would have changed
Anything
it.
else?
I don't think they would have changed, my good feeling on that particular rule. By the way, too, does everybody know also that there's no benefit in any way for this casualty loss in North Carolina? Yeah, there's no benefit whatsoever. I called both our local legislators, because back a few years ago, when they did away with the medical deduction in North Carolina, they also did away with any casualty losses whatsoever. And I told them they're probably gonna get some bad PR out of this one. I said, at least they could do what the federal did and say, we won't give you any other casualty losses, but with a federally declared disaster area, they would not. They would. But so, every legislator, just tell them, don't you think that would make common sense that when you have something to this extent? But there is nothing on North Carolina that will be allowable. Thank you for the question, though, and by the way, too, with Hurricane, yes, sir, sorry.
When do you have to amend your 2017?
You have 3 years from the date you filed it. So you could wait. It's a very good question. The question is, when do I amend my 2017 return? A lot of people are going to wait until they're calculating their 2018 return, and then just drop it on both of them and see which one saves the most money. Because you do not have, you have three years to file that amended return. That hasn't changed. Obviously, if you want to accelerate the refund of whatever money you can get back, then waiting would not accelerate the funds coming back. But for those that's not a major issue, you can just wait and just, it might be close, but if it's $200, you'll say, well, if it's $200, I might as well just take the one that's greater. There are some other issues regarding that, and I'll go into them in just a second. But so there is no time frame on that, except let's see if we're close to that. Item 4 will go over that. So hold on, I'll go into that further at that point. Okay. The personal casualty loss is an itemized deduction that's claimed on Schedule A, line 28 of your 17 return. I've got copies of those forms for 17. I expect the 2018 form to be very similar. They're not out yet, so I don't have them. So I just got a 2017 form, and I've gone through and given you a sample. And on this handout, there's probably about 25 or 30 of these that I did not number the pages, and then I realized it might help if they were numbered. So I stopped the copy machine and went and numbered them. But it's on, it's the 6th page is the itemized deduction. So that, and it's on line 28 under the other section there. You might have trouble finding that. And then the page right behind that is a form 4684, it's page 7, which shows my little hypothetical calculation of this personal casualty loss. There's a $500 quote unquote deductible. $500 deductible, but it takes it on the form. So in this situation, you see that $255,275. And I mentioned that it tells them there, the worksheets you have to calculate the personal casualty loss do not have to be attached to any tax return, but should be securely retained to support your calculation. If the casualty loss is relatively small, maybe you receive some insurance proceeds. And this is where I may be mistaken, okay? About the automatic thing of whether it would get you over the standard deduction if you have a very small casualty loss. That's why I have an insurance. So we'll have to clarify that, because it would be very, very helpful for those who are not itemizing and they have a $10,000 casualty loss and we're presidential declared disaster area. So you'd then be getting the standard deduction for 2018. If you're over 65, it's $26,600. Then you can deduct $36,600 instead of it just adding to your 5,000 contributions and getting you up to 18,000 and not helping you at all. That's the whole issue. So we'll get that out. We'll clarify that for sure. But I think because it's in 18, that I think it'll be there in 17 as well. I really do.
So it is in 17. I wasn't quite clear if it's in 18 yet.
Yeah.
But I think someone pointed that out.
On the IRS website, they have a section that says news. It's on there, it says right there that you can add it to 2000.
Yeah.
You can add it to 2008.
Standard deduction, yeah. Thank you very much, Cynthia. They read it on the IRS website that you can do that, okay? That is very helpful. Yes, sir.
Could you explain the rationale that allows you to take a casualty loss in 2017, even though the casualty occurred in 2018?
For benefit of the folks, it's a presidential declared disaster, so something bad's happened.
So you can back it up based on that?
Yeah, well, it's by law, so the rationale for them doing it, I'm perceiving being just to help the folks who've been affected by it.
Okay.
That's right. Now, item 4, I'll go right into that because it's not limited to 2017. And I think that is the part, for many of you, you're gonna have some very significant personal casualty losses. They will probably dwarf your annual income. Okay, it will probably be more than your annual income. That means it's gonna create a net operating loss probably either year you put it on. If it basically, it's no rocket scientist, if it exceeds what your total reportable income has been on your tax returns most every year, then you're gonna have created a net operating loss in the year that you put it on your tax return. Okay. The net operating loss rules allow you to carry back net operating losses. Okay? Without being a presidential declared disaster area, the general rule is you can carry it back 5 years for a net operating loss if you're a farmer, 2 years for everybody else. Well, for these rules, the 2-year rule is waived. I'm not sure I said that clearly in here, but we clarified it. And so if you go and report your loss on 2017, you then open the door for income you may have reported in 2012, 13, 14, 15, and 16, if it's big enough. And what you need to do is just think about, a lot of you, most of y'all look really, really young, but most of y'all look where y'all might have been that area, we might have been working in 2012, and y'all gotten here and you and your husband were both working, had $400,000 of earned income in 2012, and now you go back and take this loss 2017 when you had very little income, create a big net operating loss, and you can go back and carry it to 2012, and your income may have been in the 34% bracket. So you'd be getting a lot bigger bang for your buck. The things that concern me is, I hope most of y'all have preparers back home, former homes that have copies of returns. I hope they all didn't flood, But we got to get copies of those to do that. But there are things like that that can maximize your potential for those.
We can get free copies.
Pardon?
It's a form that you can fill out.
Yeah, I hope they come quicker than those I've seen, because you are dealing with the IRS. But yeah, you can figure it out, and like I said, you have time to do those. But I would take my time and get the most money. That's what I'd be doing, And I think for a lot of people, based on where you are in your life, and if you may be better off. We'll say not even just the regular tax rates have gone down now, but your earnings may be greater in those back years.
Just to kind of clarify, you can't jump from 17 to 2012. You have to water it down each year to go back.
No, you go back to the oldest one first.
You go back, how do you go back to the oldest one?
That's how you do it. You have to by law. You just can't go back and pick. The question was, if I have a net operating loss, I carry it back to 2017, and I have a net operating loss. Well, in 2012, I didn't have much income. In 2013, I did. And in 2014, it jumped all over the place. The laws were that when you carry back a loss, you go back to the oldest year first, and you use whatever loss you can to get that money back. And then there's a way you calculate how much of that net operating loss got used up in 12, and then you carry it forward to 2013. You use it all up in 13, see how much gets used up, and then you go to 14. You don't get to pick exactly how it works. And the other thing it raises a question, and that's another one, is this, Kim, or you and Devin, on that publication where where it says you can carry it back 12 years, 5 years, the other question would be, do you have to? That may be another good question. Do you have to?
It says for farmers.
Well, in the casualty loss for presidential disaster areas, that rule's waived, that's what we're saying. Yeah, mine says farmers, thank you. That's what I'm saying. For farmers, farmers definitely, if you're a farmer, you can carry back 5 years if you haven't been operating loss anytime. It doesn't have to be a presidential declared disaster area. But it may be those who are not farmers, it's all hazard that there's probably more non-farmers in here than farmers, but I know we have some farmers, that, the question is, do you have to carry it back to that 5th year if the 2nd year back gives you a better answer? You know, there's some very, there's some unusual things you don't face often. We have to figure that out as far as whether you have your choice. Yes, sir.
But to determine the NOL, net operating loss, you have to start with the 2017 return, correct?
No, sir. If you choose, if you have figured out that the best thing for you to do is to claim the 2018 loss on your 2017 tax return, then you're going to figure the net operating loss on that 2017 return. But if you choose not to do that, you would put it on your 2018 return. You would figure the net operating loss for 2018, and then you go back, you can carry it back to 2013, 14, 15, 16, and 17 until it gets used up. You know, so besides the year 2012, frankly, that's a good question. Besides the year 2012, and the ability to get your refund quicker, maybe by doing 2017 now, by doing your tax return on 2018, if you got a whopping loss that's going to swallow up all your income, there's probably not a lot of difference in some cases because because the only year you're going to miss out on is 2012. I don't think there will be many people, hope there's not, that will not have their net operating loss used up in 2 or 3 years. There may be some, though. Unfortunately, there may be some. Does that make sense, sir? Yeah, makes sense.
Excuse me, so you're saying we can only carry a net operating loss forward? We can't carry it back?
No, ma'am. Okay, scrub the net operating losses again. Net operating loss, the default position if you claim a net operating loss is that you carry it back. Okay? I have a copy in here on page.
Can you carry it back to the latest year?
Once again, well, you carry it back 5 years. You have to carry it back, we think, to the 5th year. If you're a non-farmer, if there wasn't a presidential disaster area, ma'am, and you had a net operating loss, you can only go back 2 years. Okay? Because it's a presidential disaster area, you can go back 5. The question we've raised here, and I'll find out the answer quickly, is do I have my choice of going back 5 or 2 because it's a presidential disaster area? Okay? But there is on page, and I've got some schedules here that calculate net operating loss that y'all have seen, some of y'all probably have seen. It's on page 9. On page 11 is an election to forego the period, and it's 2 places actually. It's actually on this 4684 on page 4. Well, there's two elections. But on page 11 is the one that shows that I'm electing to forego carrying my loss back and only going to want to carry it forward. Okay? Part of the, so does everybody understand that? You have just very, very little income in the past, and it's not worth doing the same rate. I don't think many people would want to do that, frankly. I agree with that.
I'm confused with the term net operating loss. Since we are the normal taxpayer and we're not running a business, how do you calculate that net operating loss versus the casualty
Okay, the question is, I'm confused about what a net operating loss is, okay? I want everybody, if they could, because this is right in the operating loss, turn to page 4, which is the Form 1040. If you look at this return, this is the 2017 form. If you look at the total income on that return, it's $89,633, okay? Without that casualty loss, this would obviously not be a net operating loss, okay? It would not. If we had a casualty loss of $30,000, so if you go, turn to page 5, and you see line 40, y'all raise your hand if you don't see that. Line 40 is the total of the itemized deductions, and $267,975. But without that casualty loss, we would not have a net operating loss, okay? And the net operating loss is not as much as the casualty loss because we had $89,000 in income, okay? So if you look at line 41 on that page 5, where it says the amount of the adjusted gross income on 38 minus line 40 equals a negative 178,342. If you go over to my page 9, you'll see there's a net operating loss worksheet. And that is, in this situation, because the income is very simple, it's just Social Security benefits and W-2 wages. That's all this tax return had. That net operating loss is the negative 178,342. So to answer your question, ma'am, if you have super high income and you have a personal casualty loss and it doesn't exceed your total income, you're not going to have a net operating loss. Okay? But most people, I think, or a lot of people are going to have casualty loss more than their total income. Okay?
I have a question.
Yes.
And forgive me if I sound ignorant, this is not my area of expertise. But you talk about going back. Is there a reason to go back and not just claim the whole loss of 2018? Like, does the government cap out, like you can only lose so much in a year and you have to go back? Or can my husband and I just claim the whole 2018 as a loss?
Well, you're going to claim the whole loss.
Right.
What we're saying in these situations is the loss exceeds your income.
Right.
So you get more benefit out of that loss than just the current year.
Okay, I'm following you. So you
Okay.
take that extra to past years.
Past years, or, and like Lady wisely pointed out, I think, is that you can do that election just to carry it forward. It makes it simpler. I'm not sure it's going to come out better. If you're a heavy wage earner and you're getting ready to go into some really high income years, it may come out better. I will point out, those of you who are still working a job and you end up having a personal casualty loss and you haven't carried forward into the future, if it was me, I'll be going to my employer and stop all federal withholdings and getting all my money back, every check, because you're not going to need it. Once you've got a handle on how, you can probably predict pretty easily how long this is even going to last. Say, we're going to make about 90 next year. Well, our carry forward is 150, so it's going to probably last for a good year and a half. So just trying to get you all the money you can currently. That help?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So net operating losses is one of these things where when we do these for any reason, you're just sort of looking back at all the years that you have that you can carry back to and looking what your income and taxes were in those years, and just seeing which way helps you best. That's what you're going to do. Yes, ma'am.
We had a question on the Facebook Live feed, and I think I understood it correctly. I think they were asking about how far you can put back if your house is relatively new, if it's only been built for 1 or 2 years.
Okay, the question was, if my house was brand new, how far can I carry my loss back? That has nothing to do with how far you can carry it back. That's determining the loss, okay? The size of your house, the size of your, nothing to do with your property has anything to do with how far you can carry it back. It's based on your income. Well, it's based on the law they allow you to do, what determines what you can carry it back. your choices will be based on your income levels in those years and which one would be better off for you. I'll point out again though, you got a rate reduction that happened in 18 already. Most everybody's rates are gonna be down this year by the new tax law. So right now, if your income stayed the same, you probably are leaving some money on the table by claiming it in 18 if you have consistent income every year. Okay, you probably, how much? It's only a 3% reduction, in the rate, but, it may be $1,000 or so.
You got a question?
Yes,
Can you pick and choose what year, going back 5 years?
no,
You gotta go, you either take the current year, or you gotta go back starting 2012.
well, that's correct. Sir, we have said this though, one clarification in that, is whether, like farmers have this, I'm always about 95% sure something, that 5% of doubt can creep in. I think farmers actually have the choice, I thought I had mine turned off. Farmers had, the choice of going 2 or 5. The question is, do I have to carry it back the 5 years they allow me to? Rules designed to help you if you need it. The question is, do I have to? We'll get that information out, okay? If I got the card, I'll try to send the email out. People put the email addresses on there. We'll find the answer out unequivocally for that. Okay? Yes, sir.
I think one of the problems that many of us are going to have is that our files, our laptops, TurboTax, all that is lost in the flood.
And I assume that you did your own tax return?
Yes.
Yeah. I think the only option there is a form, to request a transcript.
4506.
4506, I'm not a big remembering form number plan, I just know there's that form out there. Form 4506, there's a form you can go in there and fill out and request a transcript of your prior year tax returns.
Thank you.
But do it quickly, because as I say, I don't necessarily trust how quick the IRS can get those back sometime. Okay. I'm turning the page now to item 5. I think on item 5, I just touched on about making sure if you do carry your laws forward, that you are telling your employers or your pension payers who you've had some withholdings on your federal only. Don't change the state or you will on the state. On your federal only, it makes no sense to have them to continue to take out taxes for these year or two if you got a loss carried forward. And number 6, I think I'm totally, because of, you can tell that I was not totally aware of that rule. That's a change since Hurricane Florence. I think it's a good change. Because number 6 talks about figuring your itemized deductions and adding it to the casualty laws. Well, if you can just add it to the standard, then for those of you who know your other stuff was not enough to itemize, that doesn't matter. That statement says, go get everything else now that you know you got the casualty laws. But
That hasn't happened for Florence yet.
they haven't announced that.
They haven't announced it, they did it late for prior storms.
For
But
Harvey and,
specifically named storms are named, but they haven't actually announced it yet for Florence, it was just added to the standard.
okay.
That's correct, that's why I was questioning you. Has
Well,
it-
we have to keep an eye on that. I mean, you want to tell me my opinion? There's no way in God's green earth they're going to allow for Hurricane Harvey and those for last year.
Yeah, but the standard deduction is so much higher.
That's true. That is true.
That's why there's a question in my mind.
I see what you're saying. That's very good. Well, I still think they're gonna allow it. I've been wrong before. They don't consult with me either. Yes, ma'am.
The gentleman that was at the FEMA office that represented the IRS, he said that you would have to itemize your deduction.
No, he was wrong, because I showed, we went to see that guy too. And
Okay.
I brought it up on my phone when he was sitting there, and I showed him.
Yeah.
And he said he was not aware of it.
Well, I mean, I wasn't aware of it. I didn't have any presidential disaster errors. I don't think we did last so I didn't have to face it. And so it didn't become, I know with Floyd, that was not the case, that's been a long time ago, you know, that's our job to make sure we get what would happen now. You know, right now, you know, somebody had for most of you, I think what it'll mean is have that data handy, property taxes, you know, which, property taxes and state income taxes, which now are capped this year in a different way. But those things, if we'll have to just react accordingly. But the gentleman makes a very good point, that because they've raised the standard deduction so much, but they also have taken away the exemptions, so I still think, my gut feeling is they're gonna let the rule be the same. But I think before we file the returns, we will go from that. And that's a good point. If you're trying to do your tax return now, and it hasn't been actually named by storm, you know, who knows what the IRS will do. This is not an exact science, even when the IRS gets it. My gut feeling is probably still slip right on through if you put Hurricane Florence on the top of your return. By the way, do that. Make that note. If you do it yourself, do make sure you write on the top of your amended returns, your 1040 every schedule, Hurricane Florence. You know, your zip code will tell you where it's at too, but leave nothing to chance. Write Hurricane Florence at the top of every page you send in. Yes, sir.
So did I understand you to say that they have not made that determination yet in terms of adding to the standard or going back and having to add one?
In the prior years, they made that allowance by storm. Say for Hurricane Harvey victims, you can add those deductions, that the casualty loss to the standard. We have not yet seen anything on the website where it says specifically, for Hurricane Florence victims, you can add the casualty loss to the standard deduction. It's still been relatively soon for the IRS, but right now I have a couple of resources that I can call and see if they hear anything coming down the pipe. But still, you're going to want to read it on the law before you probably, it'll be a better idea to read it in the law before you claim it.
Well, how if you fall into that, how can you amend your return if they haven't made that decision yet?
Well, if it was me, now it's on my return, or if I work for somebody else, I'd say, let's go ahead and claim it. Put Hurricane,
Just add it to the standard is what you're saying.
put on Hurricane Florence. The 17 returns are not gonna have the word Florence on it anyway.
Right.
Because it wasn't happening. You're doing some creative anyway. Because all it has is Harvey and Irma or whatever the flood storms were. I put Hurricane Florence and claimed it. And if I get it sent back and they said, we've made the determination we're not gonna allow you to do that, we just change it and send it back in. I would tell the party to go ahead and figure your itemized deductions and let's reclaim it with a little bit less. That's what I would do.
Typically, I use TurboTax, and that's all loaded in.
Yeah.
They'll even have the amended returns.
And then we'll, yeah, and once I don't know if you were here earlier, but you won't be able to file this one electronic. Called in return. So you have to print it out anyway.
Sure.
So you have to do some writing on it anyway. And
Gotcha.
I know for example, that one, the sample that I've got, on page 6, where it printed out net qualified disaster loss. I remember I had to go into my program and click, it was a Hurricane Harvey casualty for it to print that on there. The Florence is not going to be on there. Obviously, for 17. There was some overall, I want to move now to the calculation of the thing. And so I'm going to be looking at the sample page. The blank one I'm not going to refer too much. But I want everybody to turn, first of all, to the yellow page. On column C, fair market value after the flood. This is for the house and structure. The fair market value after the flood that I have $100,000. If all of y'all will circle that number, in my humble opinion, that number is the $100,000 question about what should be on that spot. That's the question. And there's no easy answer. There's no easy answer. And we all know, we have heard of homes. I'd ask this question: has anybody from outside River Landing heard of a home in Chicopin or Northeast that has been sold as is since the disaster? Somebody just said, "I'll sell it to you for blank dollars." Outside, I've not heard of one. I try to keep with that, but inside River Landing, we've heard $100, $50,000, $100,000 sight unseen within a realm. We've heard all this.
Contract was at $32 a square foot.
Yeah, and I've heard somebody quote it per square foot. What I like to do, and I'm not sure those people would be here, but I have some sheets back there that are underneath my little box of business cards. That is a sheet that if you know of someone that's sold, or if you've sold, and you're willing to share that information with me, I would not release it. But what I'm trying to do is build a database of every sale I can come up with, to kind of try to get some sort of reasonable database that I can argue from. Like I told you, I've called other CPAs. Some of them say I wouldn't be claiming anything unless I got an appraisal of the property after the storm. I said, "You're not going to get anybody to do that." I said, "You can't do it."
But can you use the safe harbor methods? Can you use the safe harbor method to do the reduction in value based on it for a federally declared disaster? For a federally declared disaster, the safe harbor method, if you got a contract signed contract from a contractor with the value it's going to do to replace, that's your reduction.
Sure. No question. Let me ask a question for everybody in here. Do y'all think that's your loss? Does any of y'all think that is probably what your loss is? What it would take to fix it back?
No.
That is the problem. Okay, I'm sorry. His question was, can't you use the safe harbor method of claiming a reduction in value, which is whatever it costs to get it back? The construction cost to get it back. I'm sure you can. I'm sure you can. From what I've heard with people, that's not what they want to claim. That's not what they want to claim. And I humbly don't think that's the right answer.
Why don't they want to claim it?
Well,
No, I'm just saying,
well,
if my house is worth X, it cost me $250 to bring it back to X, wasn't my loss $250? Or am I trying to am I trying to sit there and say, well, it isn't gonna go back up that much, so I'm gonna make it clear $350?
Well, let me get your question first. I'll go there. Yes, sir.
There was a gentleman here this morning, I think he's a flipper, he said he's bought 6 in River Landing, he paid $32 a square foot.
32 square foot, yeah.
Can we use that?
You can. Yes, sir.
Yes, well, I checked out the first 4 that were sold off the register of deeds, and it was about $25 a square foot.
Yeah.
I've done another 4, and I'm planning on doing them at least until the end of the year. I'll send those to you, and I'll also put them on whatever this website is for River Landing.
Okay.
And that's what I'm gonna make my decision.
Gotcha. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
$37,500.
Well, I mean, I think here's what we're, in a nutshell, we all know that there's a lot of people who built their homes in the last 10 years, and they built them. A lot of people already are in a situation where the market value of their homes are already less than what they paid for, right? We already know that. So you're sitting here with a home that costs $575,000, that's worth $450, and you owe $500 on it already. It gets decimated by the flood, and you're sitting here, and with all the choices you've had, you say, well, let's borrow from FEMA another whatever they would lend me, 200, and now I've got more than 700. The house was worth 450 before the flood. Now there's knowledge that it will flood, or it will flood twice, or it will flood 3 times. What am I going to be able to sell that house for?
I don't think the IRS is gonna allow you to claim that as a loss.
Well, the question is though.
If your house because, say, a neighbor's house is flooded.
No, that isn't it. That isn't it, sir. That's what I'm saying. That's why the reason for this database. The appraisers will tell you, we can't take one $100 sale and say everything's gonna sell for $100. They're not gonna tell you that. I'm gonna tell you right now that if you do claim, if we had a database of a bunch of homes selling for $32 a square foot or $25 a square foot, and you claim that your loss is that, and it is more than, if you use that, and that is more of a reduction than the cost to get it back to where it was, there's more exposure on claiming that than it is just to claim the cost to get it back. I also know of a couple of sales that don't go with this argument. I know of at least one sale at River Landing in which there was a contract to sell the property, and the buyer was willing to stick with the sales price after the flood, but the selling person had to fix it back to where it was. Well, that doesn't work with our argument very good at all. I've also known that there's a house outside the flood area in River Landing, but on the river side of 41 that sold at the same market value that they listed at, and it sold. That doesn't give us a good argument, although that one didn't flood either. It didn't flood. But the fact that the whole development is tainted and it's corruption, but I'm telling you though, that if you read through the law, the law's pretty simple. It says, and I'll read it to you. I'll read the, the lesser of the cost of the damaged property and the drop in fair market value from just before the event to immediately after the event. And I've looked over numerous documents trying to find something that tells me that if there's some obvious drop in value that happens because of the event, and I didn't have a lot of damage, do I still claim it? And I'm looking for something to tell me, sir, you cannot do that.
I think I've seen something in the IRS that gives that as an example.
Yeah, well, right now, and I've looked and I haven't been able to find it. I've asked around multiple places and tried to find it.
If your house is damaged and you've lost value due to the sustained damage, that's one situation.
Well, that's true, yeah, definitely.
Due to a decrease in market value.
Because of the casualty.
That's not.
Well, I mean, once again, hey, you get my card. Get my card.
Or else everybody in River Landing would have a net loss.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's why a lot of them are. Pardon?
Repeat that question that you talked about. It's hard to hear.
I'm sorry. Well, what he's saying, and I forgot your first name again. Charles, and was that the IRS is not going to allow, what he's read, the IRS is not going to allow you to claim more of loss in value than what it actually costs to get it back to where it was before. I have not read that. I've looked and I have not read that.
It's in the same section that talks about different types of losses, gambling losses. I mean,
Yeah.
The IRS basically gives a variety of examples.
Well, once again,
Different types of losses and what is allowable or not.
Yes, sir.
Well, I'll throw my 2 cents out on this argument. Fair market value is a fluid number. It's changing on a daily basis. 2 years from now, our fair market values could be entirely different. Now, are you gonna sit there?
But this is 2 distinct fair market values. Don't lose sight of that.
Okay.
It's just before and just after. What happens after that doesn't matter. And that's sort of a hard number to determine. Yes, sir.
On your column C, when you say fair market value $100,000, we would claim something like that. Does that become the new basis on the property?
No, just think, the amount of the loss that you claim related to it, that would do it. Whatever loss you claim overall on the residence. In this case, I don't think it'd be your initial cost, plus any improvements you made. So that first column A, your cost, $395, it's it, minus the $245. Let me make sure I'm thinking about this right. I hadn't asked myself that question. I don't think the 100,000 is though. I don't think the 100,000 is. There's the 395 that you have. It was your original cost in my example, less the 245 that you claimed as a loss. I think that's it. I'd like to give it some more thought, make sure I'm thinking right on that. Yes, sir.
If you have unimproved land, can you take the value before the hurricane from the value, fair market value after?
It's the same deal. Like Charles points out, that one really goes to the crux of the matter of what he's saying, is that if you're a house that didn't have any damage whatsoever, but you're inside and the development, nobody's coming around to even look at houses anymore, can you claim a drop in value? And that one would make me more nervous than one that had damage, although it's the same principle.
It looks like there's two opinions.
Yeah. Well, once again, if I, right now I'm all for trying to claim the most possible and getting you to claim the most possible. But if it was me and I know how to drop in value, this is your only time for most of it that it's allowable to claim anything for your residence. When you sell your residence later on, there you can't take a capital loss on a residence. So,
Can't we look at the definition? This is a casualty loss. What does the IRS considers the definition of casualty? And I think that's the crux of the matter. Because I think this, I love your argument of trying to do that. But I'm not so sure.
Well, I know what you're saying. Once again.
But it's called a casualty loss. And if you suffered no casualty, how can you take?
Well, I agree. Where I've come down on that, even looking at it, let's say you had damage, but it wasn't significant. So you had some damage and it wasn't significant, but you had a severe drop in value. Does that little bit of casualty make it? And once again, I'm looking
for the answer.
Once again, that is what we're looking for, and that's why I want you that circle that $100,000. I'm not going to be. There's going to be people that will claim it. There'll be people that do not. If I read the same case that Charles reads, and I interpret it as saying they're telling me you absolutely can't not do that, I'd still want to see it in the law. I'd still want to see it in the law that it says you can't do it. Although a publication is a pretty good authority, that's the way they are assessing the rules.
And isn't it true that because this is a presidential declaration, it goes by zip code? So you don't really have to do much. It's automatically in the IRS database that the zip code of 28466 is subject to the declaration against the president's.
That is my understanding.
Yes.
And,
so if you suffered if you're doing this calculation that you're proposing, it may clear through without any hiccups at all because it's not something you have to go through a big explanation for.
The 2017 amended returns are going to have to be mailed in.
Okay.
Human beings are going to process them. There'll be a bunch of them.
Well, that's more dangerous than the computer process.
But bottom line is this, though. Bottom line is this, though. We're going to right now. I mean, I listen to every source of information I get my hands on. When I hear somebody tell me they've read something that says you can't do that, and I've looked all over the place for it, first thing I do is says, I would love for you to email me if you still have that thing, because I've looked trying to find that answer. And I have not seen it tell me that yet. And that's what I'm looking for. But anyway, that is the crux of, that's gonna be the biggest piece of your casualty loss. That's gonna be the biggest piece of your casualty loss, no doubt. So quickly, well, I'm answering your questions wrong, but so if you look at this summary, you can see how it's laid out. And you can see I've got it by room. I just want to point out a few things. I mean, I don't think the cost here is going to be a significant thing, but, I would try to just get it as right as you can. I don't think cost is going to be a limitation, although people who have owned their home a long time, 40 or 50 years probably, and I know we have some Northeast and Chicopee homeowners that probably have built their houses a long time, and the relative value of the property has gone up. The time has gone up, but their cost has been relatively low. They built it so long ago. There could be cases like that in which the cost is a limitation to what you can do. Yes, sir.
Just as an example, let's say we have your basis of the property is $200,000. Let's say you take $100,000 casualty loss or $200,000 casualty loss. So that's lowering the basis to $200,000. Is that what we're saying? So when they go to sell, it's your $500,000 tax-free capital gain is now from the 200 on up. So if you sell it at 7, you're safe. If you sell it for any more, you're going to pay tax on that extra, whatever it is, above 700,000, right?
That would be correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be correct. What's that?
Very fine, George.
Let's hope we have that problem sometime. Okay, so I'm moving ahead onto the white sheets, and that's just a listing of items. Yes, sir.
Hey, Ross,
Yeah.
can you take advantage of all your properties with this hurricane like thing, or are they just gonna do like FEMA? Oh, it's gotta be the primary property. No, I know it's property, it's on one house.
If there are personal use properties, in other words, you've never claimed as rental property and depreciated them all, then it's personal property. If you have a beach house that's personal, it got damaged. If you got a house, then I would do a separate little sheet like this for each one of them, and you're gonna lump them all together and have a pretty darn big personal casualty loss. Yeah. Just remember that if you have, that if you have ever had something that a lot of people at the beach will rent it off and claim as a rental property, then go back to using it. If you've ever claimed depreciation on it, then you've written off part of your cost. And so you can't use all your cost as a in the limitation of thing. If you've had an asset like, we have a lot of people here, a lot of farmers that had stuff parked under their sheds, tractors, and they'd already written it completely off, and it was parked, and it got flooded, and it's essentially worthless now. Not all of them are. Well, there's nothing left for them to write off. They've already written it all off on their taxes in the prior period, so there's nothing left to claim. But they sure have lost, because they've lost the value of that working piece of equipment.
You may want to go over the basis versus the fair market value prior to the casualty loss. Most people are going to basically be judging the loss relative to the fair market value.
Yeah, the question was about the cost, or we use the term basis versus the loss, and right now, for people who built their house or bought it, their cost is, their basis is their cost. If you added things like sidewalks, I count permanent landscaping, and you put a heat and air unit in the last 3 or 4 years, not more than 25 years ago. Can't claim that all might count into your cost basis of your house. Okay? Now, that has nothing to do, unfortunately, with what it may be worth today. And if you're in an area where houses are being sold a lot, you probably have a good barometer of what things are selling relative to, well, what your fair market value really is before the casualty is what it would have sold for if you put it on the market and it sold. We don't know what that is. We don't know what that is. But, all we can do is base it on an educated estimate So in situations where, and then the drop in value, like we just discussed, goes down to what it was right after the flood. When I say right after the flood, what I say is that you walk into that house and stuff's floating around and there's water in it, that's right after the flood. It isn't after you clean it all out and clean the sheetrock off and let it air out. You've already done a lot of work to it then. It's just after. That's what it's worth. What would somebody buy for it then? Yeah.
On the house, FEMA come around and give you a certain amount of money.
Yep.
But if you do not fix the house, they're gonna take their money back. So how does that fit on a piece of paper? You got $25,000. If you don't use it to fix the house, they want it back.
I think it goes to your state of mind on what you know and you're gonna do with $25,000. If you know you're not gonna use it to build back the house, then and you think you have to give it back,
That's what I've been told.
then you don't count that as a reduction in casualty loss because you have to give it back.
Okay.
You know, it is what you, I mean, on that house thing that has, insurance proceeds, and including FEMA benefit, but of course you have to give it back. I guess there's a debatable question is, what if I claim it and then later on we get in an argument and I don't think I should pay it back, but they're gonna make me. Well, then theoretically the answer is you have to go back and amend his return and get the money back and you can claim a bigger loss. But theoretically. So we're on the white page. I'm in that kitchen. First, I want to say this too. If you do have receipts for things that you bought with your house, that's always better. As much support as you have for things you bought, that is always better. Make copies of them, keep it all in here to support this stuff. It's always better than estimates. I'm just trying to be a realist.
My guess is for Riverland, a lot of people would probably have contracts.
Yeah, that's right. A lot of people, for appliances and things of that nature. But I want to point out to a couple of things. If you notice, I'm putting the year you bought it and then where y'all bought it from. And that's not for anything magical. It's just trying to show them if I'm estimating it that I do remember where I got it from, and it is a valid purchase, I assure you. And it's about a year. And plus, when you're putting the fair market value before that casualty, they're going to look at what year you bought it and see that you've been reasonable based on how many years have gone by. I guess you could have some antiques that have actually gone up in value. That is possible. But for most normal items, I think you just got to be reasonable. This is just total judgment. It's total judgment. I hope a lot of people are able to get a lot of their stuff put away. But in this thing, in my mind, you go and get the biggest stuff you can think of in every room and try to get those. But you're going to get to the point where you're going to put everything else. If you have a lot of small stuff that you could write. And it's just a lot of judgment. Okay? It's a lot of, and y'all are the ones clearly in the position to name that value, and nobody else is. Y'all knew what you paid for them. You might remember, but that's, don't be scared to estimate, but be reasonable in your estimation. Okay, just be reasonable. And that's really the main thing there is to show you that. And is that, and you go through every item. When I'm bringing this through, what I envision is people can sit around and just take a couple rooms at night and let's think about what all was in there. And just try our best to sit there and say, what if you don't have your receipts, try to really see how good your mind's working and how good your memory's working and say, where did we get that? Yes, sir.
Look at pictures.
Yeah, you have pictures. That will remind you to have old pictures from any gatherings. If you're scared of something, you're going to miss something. But there's just a lot of judgment in this. And I don't think that really in the other areas, every room will be the same. And I made a note here like linen, supplies. I hope a lot of people ever get that stuff out anyway, but I think there's probably some that didn't. You know, there's nothing I can think of that got damaged that would not have a value, and if it got flooded, it was probably worthless. You know, but I think all you do is little, one room at a time, try to summarize it all together, you know, and add them all up and see where it comes out. Noticing obviously though, that still the biggest number is going to be the residents. I'm going through here to make sure on my notes there's nothing else that, on inherited property. If you inherited your home, or technically even items for that matter, but at home in particular, your cost is deemed to be the fair market value on the date the person died that left it to you. Okay? And that itself can give some unusual, so that comes into the cost part of it. Doesn't affect the value one bit. The value is still the same, but if you're living in a family home and your grandparents lived there and they died and left it to your parents who then gave it to you, then the date of your last grandparent's death, the value of that home at that point probably is your cost. One other thing I would point out too is if that party gave it to you before they died, then you did not inherit it. You had it gifted to you. And it doesn't give you a great answer for cost. Okay? Okay. But so that there probably are some of those as well. I've gone over the business casualties.
I came in late on the rental casualties. Do you put that on your rental income schedule?
No, sir, there is a disposal due to a casualty form that's more like a sale. It's like a sale form. Like if you sold a rental house, there's a form called sales involuntary conversions. And a flood of a rented house would go on that schedule. I could look up the form number. If you had a rental house, it's business property.
Yes.
But if you had it flooded and had a loss there, and you didn't get insurance, then you would claim that on a business involuntary conversion schedule. See if Kim, can you, maybe you look at that form number. There's a special form for that, but it's not an item of deduction. And if you had a loss, it would be more ordinary. I don't think that's a capital loss. Capital loss, that's what you're trying to avoid on that situation. And I don't think that is a capital loss, but that would be only limited to $3,000 a year, most positive deduction. Sorry, I don't know that form off the top, but just know that there is a separate form that if you had, when you claim a loss, like if I had a farmer with a combine that blew up and burned, and we have left to depreciate there, there's a special form to claim a loss like that as well. That's the same form. Yes, sir.
Getting off this track, would you feel comfortable giving for $10,000 or $25,000, whether it's personal property or residence value, on what real dollars at tax time you're gonna put back in your pocket?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
If I'm claiming a $200,000 residential loss, I have a second home, no FEMA assistance, no flood insurance, I'm claiming that on my taxes. The IRS, somebody's not writing me out a check for that. How much do I actually get?
Depends on what your tax bracket is. Well, if you had $200,000 loss, if you had probably $200,000 income, if you had a $200,000 income and it drops it to zero, 40 or 50 grand at least, whatever your rate bracket is. I mean, essentially, it's a deduction off your tax return.
My house was for sale before this event, and now it's,
Right.
I've got a home I can't live in. I'm actually gonna meet a flipper here in about 10 minutes, and I'm just trying to figure out what's the least I can take.
I said, what I would say to you, sir, is this. You might have missed the first thing, is that you know, if you look back at your 2017 return, and you had 100,000 in total income, and with your deductions, it got you to a taxable income of 75,000, and your total taxes were 9,500, you claim that loss, you'll get all that $9,500 back. And then you would create a net operating loss, and then you would look back for prior years, 2012, 13, 14, and you would go for those years, and as long as that loss lasted and it was not used up, you would then, you would get all that money back. Those people who had $500,000 income, and they're paying 34 or 5%, they'll get more money back relevant to the size of the loss because the rate of tax that they paid in that year was greater. Okay? Yes, sir.
Notice on what you did on the filing the 217 return, you assumed that this was going to be a listed federally declared disaster, so you didn't take the 10% just a gross income deduction.
That is clear. That is crystal clear.
Oh, it is, okay.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, see, the only casualty loss you can claim anymore is the federal disaster area. There's no other casualty losses allowed anymore.
So you don't need to take the 10% AGI.
No, $500 instead of.
That form 4684, which is on page 7, it backs the $500. That's all you will reduce it by. Okay? Y'all understand that? In prior years on casualty losses, you had to reduce the casualty loss by 10% of your total income and only claim it over that. You don't have to do that with these personal casualty losses, which is a good thing. I want to sit here and answer questions. There's a couple of them I want to find out, I'm going to look up further. Is it absolutely 100% at this point about Hurricane Florence, the casualty loss being added to the standard deduction? And the biggest one, and Charles, I appreciate you being here too, because I've had this conversation with 4 or 5 or 6 other CPAs, and literally most of them are split down the middle about whether they would claim a larger loss than the cost. Well, but even that, one of them, I won't mention the names, but they're out Wayfair. I call him more of a nervous Nelly. He said, I wouldn't claim the loss unless I had an appraisal afterwards. I said, we're not going to pay $400 when if I was going to do that, just get tax value, subtract my cost, and say that's the value before, that's the value after, and claim it. Really, when you think about it, the value before and the value after is so judgmental. It's really what is the drop, you know? But that is the question, and you can tell is not a certain answer. I hope that made that clear.
I think one of the big problems that I've always had is there's multiple sources. When we insure the house, the insurer basically takes a look at the cost to rebuild the house. That's what so they say this is the value of the house from an insurance standpoint. And you've got the bank that does something, and that's different basically than a private appraiser. So there's all these appraisals thrown around.
Yeah.
So it'd be a question of which one you choose, right?
Let me get her the question, and I want to mention
which one do you choose?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. So my husband and I have been audited in the past. So we have this.
Congratulations.
Well, we were poor students, and then we are 2 full-time pharmacists. It triggered something. So we have this fear of being audited because we know what it's like to go through that. So you're saying when you give all this data, it's subjective. In the event, we can't objectify everything. You know, I mean, it's up to judgment. You said that. So my question is, when we're audited, if we're audited, how do you see why?
Sure.
What do you
Sure,
do?
I mean, definitely, 100%.
There's liability.
Well, once again, my thought processes for folks I will deal with is I will continue to search for definitive support from the IRS on how they are going to handle a situation like we discussed. Now, okay, and like on that fair market value, if I have 15 sales, I probably would throw out the $100 one, probably the $50,000. I probably would. I would take the other ones in the crowd out of Raleigh that's offering that square footage amount, sight unseen, or what, almost sight unseen, and they're giving that for it. If that comes up to be more of a loss than using the cost, I would feel totally comfortable arguing to the IRS that you're crazy. We'll argue that one. Because I've got 15 sales, and appraisals, they cannot do appraisals validly until there is enough sales afterwards that they can get comparable sales on property. But here's my question, and this is mainly River Landing. You have folks across the bridge, back going up toward the Dale's house way on back there that have flooded one time. So you have some that's flooded 3 times. You have some down on Red Fox Run, when you go down the hill, it's twice. If I'm doing appraisal, and you know, this isn't a license appraisal, it's just common sense. Would it matter to you whether the thing is flooded once, twice, or 3 times?
Yeah.
How in the world anybody can do appraisals without sectionalizing that development and know what's happened in the past is beyond me. And that's why I sort of disagree vehemently that it should be limited to the cost. That's why exactly. Because the appraisers can't do anything right now, first of all. They can't, my logic is, if I can get enough sales and I have a database that says, here's their addresses, don't have anybody, I don't even want your name unless you wanted to give it to me. You tell what you sell it for in approximate square footage. I'm going to do a database and say, look, I threw out the cheap ones because those were emotional sales. People didn't think about it, just throw them out. And we take the rest of them and say, we think there's a good enough sample here to use that as our database for our own appraisal, because we do not think appraisals mean squat by a licensed person, because they have told me their people have said just take the original value before and subtract the cost. That isn't appraisal. That isn't an appraisal at all. They didn't get any comparable sales after the flood. They didn't do that. Yes, sir.
Well, a lot of them are going to use comps. And comps right now are basically studs and a sub panel. And what the concern is, you build back, and if you want to sell, then they're looking at that as the comps.
That's true. That's true. My concern thinking through the whole process was, we claim a big loss, and you're not going to get it audited until another 1.5 years. IRS don't do anything quick. You file it. So 1.5 years later, they're back selling for high values, and you claim a loss. You know, then I'm sitting there. I would still argue it.
But if your point is it's the value right after the flood, it's worse than the studs and stuff for it.
It's right. It is.
It's a contaminated house.
It's a contaminated house. They didn't say there are some. I know there's some in here that did not ever go back in their house. They said, I want to sell it just like it is. I know that. That's the condition it is. So it's just such a hard thing to put your hands on. And so I guess in a nutshell, what I'm saying is this. I would encourage y'all just to, don't rush necessarily to file until you get the best answer you can get. I understand also that my tolerance for such things may be more than some folks.
Can I throw open a question?
Sure.
To anybody here. The $32, is that for a mitigated house or non-mitigated?
$32, is that for a mitigated house, or what condition was the house in for $32? Pardon?
Unmitigated or mitigated? Some people mitigated and sold. Some people didn't mitigate.
Unmitigated, yeah. So what was the answer? Not mitigated.
Okay, so you think it was a not mitigated?
Yes. Yes, sir.
For realtor opinion versus the appraisal, we know we can't get accurate appraisal. For realtor opinion, substantiates the
If it makes sense.
in the eyes of the IRS.
That,
Rather than just paper.
every bit of evidence you have can only help. But if it's your buddy, the realtor, that gives you a sweetheart answer that makes no sense, and they know that crap goes on all the time, or it can. That's why my idea, and I don't know how many I'm going to get. I don't. I would encourage y'all, if you do have, and I don't mind sharing that with anybody and everybody. If I can get enough samples out there, and say, I'm never 100% sure of anything, but I think an IRS agent, if I sit in front of them and I say, sir, this is what houses have sold for since there. And I said, and we've got 15 or 20 of them. What is the best evidence for market value after this event? What is the best market value? It's what it sells for. That's the best market value. And I would go to my grave arguing that, now, they might say, I don't care what you believe, sir. We don't agree with you, and we'll make you go to appeal.
I have less of a problem with a number after the fact. I've got a problem with what number you use for market values.
Before the flood. Well, they can come up with that. Well, Duplin County, they can do appraisals for that. You can.
You could use the tax number, but the tax number, in some cases, is different from.
I would agree with that, though. I mean, I think you do need another party's number. I would use tax value where I pull it out of my own head.